Hello there. Not a single drop of Russian oil will arrive at British ports. The British government sealed this on December 5th with a ban on oil imports from Russia. Even before the ban, the kingdom had severely reduced Russian imports in order to financially weaken Russia in the war against Ukraine. The last shipment of gas arrived in March and coal was last imported in August, according to the UK Department of Energy at least. The EU, on the other hand, is having trouble getting away from Russia's fuels, at least some of them. You can say the UK did a good job, but it wasn't a great job, says Ben McWilliams, energy expert at the Bruegel think tank. Even before the war, the British imported little from Russia. There is also no direct pipeline between Great Britain and Russia. In 2021, before the war in Ukraine, only around 4% of all gas imports came from Russia, according to official statistics. In the EU, on the other hand, Russian gas accounted for 40%, as BP report shows. So Britain had it much easier because the starting point was very different from that of the EU, says McWilliams. The UK is self-sufficient in gas. Around half of the gas demand is covered by the British continental shelf, which lies in the waters around the island nation. The rest is covered with imports, mainly from Norway. The kingdom imported a little more Russian oil, and dependency on Russia was also lower there than in the EU. Britain slipped into a new role this year. It exported record amounts of gas to help the EU in sanctions against Russia, because after the explosion of the Nord Stream pipeline in September, Northwest Europe suddenly lacked the energy infrastructure, and the result was gas shortages. Since then, the kingdom has been sending gas to Belgium and the Netherlands via underwater pipelines to fill the EU's gas storage facilities. The UK has become a liquefied natural gas or LNG bridge. LNG is imported into the UK, routed through the UK network, and then transported through pipelines to Northwest Europe, says McWilliams. This not only increases energy security in the EU, but also that of Great Britain, because the energy markets are linked by a common infrastructure. That would change again in the coming weeks and months, says McWilliams. The EU has leased 25 floating storage units, which will soon allow large volumes of gas to be imported directly. While the EU was busy filling up gas storage for the winter, that was less of an issue for the UK. Storage capacity is really tiny compared to other countries. That's mainly because the UK doesn't have to store a lot because it produces a lot of its own gas, says McWilliams. Well, here in Germany, on the other hand, we need larger storage facilities because Germany hardly produces any gas itself. And this also applies to Austria. Austria is the opposite of Great Britain. It has a huge gas storage facility, and the gas that is currently in the storage facilities is enough for almost a year. Nevertheless, England put an old gas storage facility on the east coast back into operation in October in order to increase storage capacity somewhat. Although it's only running at 20% of its previous capacity, this doubles the storage capacity. The storage plant would be enough to get 1 million households through the winter for 100 days. The supply is therefore not so much the problem for Great Britain, but rather the sharp rise in energy prices. The British would be hit particularly hard, says Anna Valero, who researches economic performance and sustainable growth at the London School of Economics, the LSE. Germany is dependent on Russian gas primarily because of industry. We are more dependent on gas to heat our houses than some of our European colleagues, says the economist. Around 85% of British households heat with gas compared to less than 50% in Germany and France. In addition, many houses are poorly insulated and more heating is therefore required. According to a study by the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, British homes have the worst energy efficiency in all of Western Europe. Yeah, we really have high rules here for building houses. Making the UK less dependent on fluctuating global gas prices will require the expansion of cheap and clean renewable energy. We were leaders in terms of climate neutrality. We quickly passed it into law and defined a climate strategy. But the problem is that we are lagging behind in implementation, says Anna Valero. The war in Ukraine, COVID, and also the political chaos in London have contributed to the climate projects being delayed. A new nuclear power plant is currently on the agenda. The government confirmed at the end of November that would invest £700 million in the project. The construction of a nuclear power plant was last approved in 1987. The project, called Sizewell C, is set to be built in Suffolk and will serve 6 million households for more than 50 years and create 10,000 new jobs. The fact that the construction of new wind turbines and new solar parks is currently practically prohibited by special regulations caused debates in Great Britain. Even if the island state operates many wind turbines by the sea, expansion is also necessary on land and would offer cheaper electricity than nuclear energy, says Valero. Also, they made a U-turn now. After much back and forth, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak recently announced that restrictions on the construction of new wind turbines and solar parks would be relaxed. Looking ahead to next winter, China will play a major role because China demanded less gas due to the ongoing lockdowns. More was left for the EU and the storage facilities were 95% full, according to a report by the International Energy Agency, the IEA. Next year, the EU could be short of half the liquefied natural gas it needs, they say, because China is heating up. This year, gas was still flowing from Russia in the first half of the year. The temperatures were unusually mild and China was out of the picture. Similar favorable circumstances are very unlikely next year. The even higher gas prices as a result could become a problem for Great Britain, though. Therefore, governments must make immediate action to accelerate energy efficiency improvements and promote the use of renewable energy and heat pumps, warns Fatih Birol, Executive Director of the IEA, in the report. Britain must look to good cooperation with the EU, says McWilliams. The UK has helped with gas supplies in recent weeks, but at other times it is the EU that supplies gas to the UK. Britain, but still wants to supply Ukraine with hundreds of thousands more rounds of artillery ammunition in the fight against Russia now, to stay in the Ukraine for a moment. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak will present the new artillery package at a meeting of the Multinational Joint Expeditionary Force in Latvia. That's what the British government said. The €287 million contract will ensure a constant supply of important artillery ammunition to Ukraine throughout 2023, it said. Since the start of Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine, Britain has already delivered more than 100,000 rounds of ammunition and other military equipment, including multiple missile systems and 125 anti-aircraft guns. And that's good because several loud explosions were heard in Kiev and in the region around the Ukrainian capital early Monday. It was initially not clear whether the explosions were air defense systems or impacts. The Kiev city administration announced on its Telegram channel that more than 20 Iranian-made Russian drones had been discovered in the airspace over the city. At least 15 were shot down, but critical infrastructure was hit. And according to the Russian news agency Interfax, Russian armed forces will start tactical military exercises in Belarus. The final assessment of the combat capability and combat readiness of the units will be made by the command at the final stage of coordination after conducting battalion tactical exercises. That's what Interfax reported, citing the Russian Defense Ministry. It was not immediately clear when and where the exercises would be held in Belarus. The Belarusian Defense Ministry said in October that 9,000 Russian soldiers would be deployed to the country as part of a regional pooling of forces to protect the borders. But we all know what this really means. Everybody is still expecting, latest in the spring, an attack from the Russians on Kiev from Belarus. But to get back to the gas part and the Ukrainian part. The Russian war of aggression is the reason for all of this. That's why I combined this in this video. And once again, we see how important cooperation is. I talked in 2 videos today already about Brexit, which ended a lot of cooperation. But we see how important cooperation is, and especially in the case of the war of Ukraine, there is excellent cooperation between continental Europe and Great Britain. So there is no problem at all, and everyone has to do their share there. And it is quite interesting how much is been sent there, what's going on there. So if you've never had a look on my military channel, where I'm talking not only about the weapons but also about the developments with proposals and deals and lendings and delivering, you should have a look for once. There's always a link in the video description, and I try to keep up putting the other channels in the pinned comment under the video every day, so that you can have a look, because there's a lot going on. And of course, some will be interested in the technology as well. That is always part of the video when I'm talking about developments. So there's something for everyone. And of course, a lot is going on this planet. So if you haven't done so yet, have a look at my Outside Views magazine channel. You will get a different magazine on a different part of the world every day. There are daily videos as well. And once a week it's Britain as well. So at least once a week there's something, if you're not interested in anything else, but which I hope you do, because it's so important to have a look outside your bubble. Please do. And I'll see you in my next video. I'll be back.